Kamala Harris' internal numbers also never showed that she was beating Trump. It is a bit of a shocker, for the record. This is actually a shocker. Harris campaign aide saying that internal polling never had her ahead of Trump is a shocker. Why is it a shocker? Because they didn't even change their campaign strategy. And they acted like they were throwing up LeBron numbers, dude. I don't know how contenty it is, but Pod Save America interviewed the people responsible for the Kamala Harris, and it's apparently maddening. Yeah.
Welcome to Pod Save America. I'm Dan Pfeiffer.
By the way, speaking of which, I will be fucking hosting Pod Save America tomorrow. So it's actually good to see this conversation take place. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, a lot is going on, okay? A lot is going on in the HasanAbi universe, and I just often forget. Mark Warner wanted to ban Steam for being too anti-Semitic. That's funny. Yeah, in person. Haas Save America tomorrow. I listened to it this morning, and they get progressively angrier.
We have a special show for you today. I am here in Washington, D.C., where I'm about to sit down.
The main show, chat.
With the leadership of the Harris-Walz campaign for their first interview about what happened in the election. Last week, Michael Tyler, who's the communications director for the campaign, called me. Thanks for that.
Yeah, the president was really ending. He knew
going into election day. And
it's Jen O'Malley Dillon.
Consultant on all of it. Thank you for doing this. Very much appreciate you having this conversation with us here on Pod Save America. Just a level set, Jen, I'll start with you. How did you feel going into election day? And at what point did you have a sense that things were beginning to break Trump's way? Was there a county result, something about the turnout? Like, was there a moment when you sort of understood that how it was going to end?
Well, the truth is that we really thought this was a very close race. We talked about the entire time we saw it as a margin of error race, almost the entire time the vice president was in the race. And we knew we had to have strong turnout on election day. We saw early vote really ending strong for us, and saw, the types of voters we wanted to see turn out. But, we expected this to be close. We also expected that Florida was going to come in a bit redder. Virginia, we knew was tracking to being, that we were going to be ahead, but that we would be ahead by less than we were in 2020. So we were expecting to see that when we saw that. We also did anticipate that the night would go relatively long because some of these states would take longer to come in. But I think it was, really after polls closed, there was nothing that we saw throughout the day. There was nothing that we saw that told us there was overwhelming turnout or anything out of complete expectations on Trump's side. But it really took us into the hours of, polls closed.
Comments, an entire team talking over 90 minutes and not one good answer to a single question. This is actually worse than I thought. Actually, we did really, really good. It was like super hard. The long and short of it is none of these people should ever run a national campaign again. The Obama era is over. Let me save you 90 minutes. They learn nothing. It's like listening to corporate marketing department. They don't actually get customers/votes. There's such a huge disconnect. Pod Save America is in a unique intersection because they are directly tapped into Democratic establishment. They were a part of the Democratic establishment under the Obama era, and they have immediate access to the people that run these campaigns. But they are an independent media operation, which means they get comments, which means that their audience is not directly MSNBC watchers. Okay, sort by new on your video. They're pouring honey on you. What do you mean? Which video? Oh, the older video that I did with Pod Save America from before the election.
Welcome to Pod Save.
Wait, I do want to see that actually. Is it here? Or did they post it somewhere else? This might be the official one. What is this? Do you remember the Garbage Day Internet Culture newsletter? Just remembered he said you should be the token leftist on Pod Save, lol. Mega popular Twitch streamer. Hasan Park is probably close to the Rogan figure we have on our list. He's masculine, he's funny, he's tapped into the video culture, he's aggressively left-wing, but he might be too political to capture the mainstream like Rogan has. More importantly, Piker's a streamer. Rogan is a podcast. You can download it on any app and listen to it on the way. Live streaming will never be as accessible. Maybe the Pod Save guy should hire him and let him yell at them for the next 4 years, lol. That's funny. Oh, here.
Winning those voters.
Dude, if you go back and watch this video, it is so different. Bro was spitting straight facts and no one in the Democratic Party was listening. Hasan is right. I'm a Democrat at 41. The campaign is making me sad. They keep moving right. Dude fucking nailed what happened this week. Yeah, they're pouring honey on the goat because I was right. Have Sam Hyde on to talk about what's happening. He's very erudite. I have my disagreements with Hasan, but he was right about the bro vote. Aged like fine wine. Hasan was right. Aged very well, Hasan. Sounds like Hasan was right. Trump won the Gen Z vote. They should have had this dude in their campaign. All his criticisms that were even before the election turned out to be the exact reasons why the Dems lost the election. Very, I mean, vindicated once again, permanently. Hasan is a literal terrorist sympathizer, had a Houthi terrorist on his show and was laughing with him, laughing at videos of hostages being taken, contributing to chat on October 7th podcast, saying they deserved it. Calling Israeli babies settler babies. He had a terrorist on his show and told them, we support you. Stop normalizing this. We need a Rogan, but entirely different except for aesthetic. Yeah. This is why, while it is incredibly self-serving for me to tell every liberal person that I'm the Joe Rogan of the left because they're desperately looking for one, and then they should give me billions of dollars so that I can be the Joe Rogan of the left. I still have to be honest and say that you can't podcast your way out of this issue. Would you appreciate the chance of doing something with Ezra Klein again? Yeah, I reached back out to Ezra. So Ezra's team and I had long conversation, which was right before Kamala Harris became the nominee. We had a long conversation with Ezra about the manosphere. Ironically enough, you know what my take is. You know what I've said. I've said this on the Pod Save America interview as well. This was even months prior to that. But then Kamala Harris got swapped for the candidate. So they dumped that episode that we were going to do together. But I was supposed to be on, no, I didn't ghost them. I was supposed to be on the New York Times pod with Ezra Klein. And I was very excited for it too. It's just that it didn't end up happening because obviously a lot more world-shaking events occurred. And, you know, that's neither here nor there, but we might do something in the future.
Us to know for sure that things
we
were
should
not
be watching the Democratic Party.
Tightening. They were tight, but they weren't tightening in the direction we needed them to be.
And is that just because Trump's turnout was so high?
Well, honestly, I think it's a little bit mixed. I mean, we saw certainly Trump turnout high in early vote. We really believe that to be mode shifting, and that's what I think it was. I think we also saw turnout was as expected in rural areas. Like, we didn't see anything that said, you know, like maybe we saw in 16 or even in 20 that he had more turnout than we had anticipated. And our analytics really was quite close, much closer than it had been in 20 and in 16. But I do think we saw some lighter turnout in some of the areas we had hoped, but difference of a point here or there, which obviously in a close race makes a huge difference. And then I think we saw a little bit of a drop in support in a few areas for us. So that ultimately, I think, is why we weren't able to close the gap. It wasn't so much that what we were seeing in the battlegrounds was out of expectation or that he had some hidden turnout we hadn't picked up on.
David, when you say it was a margin of error race, you need a high turnout, what did your polls tell you where the race was heading into Election Day?
Well, Dan, you and I talked prior to the election, and just to rewind, I think when Kamala Harris became the nominee, she was behind. We kind of, climbed back.
Yeah, this is the craziest part of this is that the new information, where the is it, that shows that the Kamala Harris internal numbers also never showed that she was beating Trump. It is a bit of a shocker, for the record. This is actually a shocker. Harris campaign aide saying that internal polling never had her ahead of Trump is a shocker. Why is it a shocker? Because they didn't even change their campaign strategy. And they acted like they were throwing up LeBron numbers, dude. It's crazy. Like, they were throwing on purpose. Like, what the fuck going on? Yeah, I saw the list. Funny list, but good mention for UG. I saw. It's a great list. It's not a funny list. I like the list, the complex list. I'm number 5. I'm very honored to be amongst, some of the best in the game. Yeah. Kamala Harris's internal numbers showing that they were doomed from the jump is fucking nuts. It's nuts, especially when they were like, yeah, shit's looking bad. And then we just got to keep moving right.
And even post-debate, we still had ourselves down, in the battleground states, but very close. And so I think by the end, it was a jump ball race. And I think we needed some things to break our way. Maybe Trump's election day turnout would underperform. Our election day turnout would, either be at level or overperform. And, we'd win more of the people who decided in the last 3 or 4 days. I think our data and the New York Times data and other public data suggested we did have some progress with undecideds at late October. So it was a dead heat race. But, at the end of the day, the political atmosphere was pretty brutal. And that's not an excuse. You had right track, wrong track, I think 28-72, about 70% of the country saying they were angry and dissatisfied.
Yeah, and we saw that. We saw that, just like I constantly mentioned. Remember, this was a thing that I mentioned all the fucking time. And the campaign was like, we got to move directly move towards Joe Biden. But then only try to outflank him by going more to the right. We saw and did nothing. We saw and sometimes even did worse than nothing. We saw that and we did the worst possible thing you could do.
You had Trump's approval rating on his first term, frustratingly high, 48 to 51, depending on the state. Obviously, the incumbent president's approval rating around 38 to 41, depending on the state. And, you know, I think the economy and inflation still driving a lot of votes. So I think given that we had a challenging political environment, the fact that we got the race to dead heat was positive, but boy, it was slow moving. And I think we were focused on 7 states. You know, that's our windshield into the world, the battleground states. But, you know, what we saw on election day was, you know, New Jersey and California and Connecticut and New York, massive shifts. So I think where Kamala Harris campaigned, we were able to keep the tide down a little bit, but it ended up being a pretty strong, you know, tailwind for Donald Trump. And I think it's worth reminding everybody, we saw in 22, even though that was a pretty decent Democratic year, we saw these shifts. We saw them in 20, we saw them in 16. You know, Trump specifically, but Republicans generally.
Please, man, be honest. The biggest mistake Harris made was saying the only difference between Biden, she would have 1 Republican in the government. She should have said 2. You're right. You're right. Americans obviously were like, actually, how about all Republican members of the cabinet? That's what they voted for. And that's the only method to win. That's the only way that we can win. We have to become Republicans. We just have to be Republican. We are the real Republican Party. Please vote for us. Why is nobody voting for us? Yes.
Improving their vote share amongst non-college voters, particularly non-college voters of color. And this was a surprising race because Kamala Harris actually did, I think, better with senior voters than I think a lot of people would have thought. So margin of error race where we inherited a deficit, we got it to even, but the thing never moved. So to Jen's point, I think we were, you know, we were hopeful. I don't know how optimistic we were, but we thought, okay, this is tied. And if a couple of things break our way, and listen, I'm naive in this way. I just thought at the end of the day, particularly because Trump did not close well, I thought, and I thought Kamala Harris closed well. Trump was reminding people some of the things they don't like about him, that might give us what we needed. But at the end of the day, I think the political atmosphere, the desire for change, all those fundamentals that you've spent a lot of time talking about really presented huge challenges for us. So, you know, we got there, but we didn't get the breaks we needed on election day.
How deep was the hole that she had to climb out of?
Well, Jen, I mean, I think, listen, there was the Biden-Trump 1.0, which is obviously pretty catastrophic in terms of where the race stood. When we got in, my recollection is some of that snapped back, but, you know, we were behind. I mean, I think it surprised people because there was these public polls that came out in late September, early October, showing us with leads that we never saw. You know, I mean, it was just basically a race that in the battlegrounds was 46-47, 47-48. So that's not where we started. We started behind. She was able to climb out. I think even after the debate, we might have gained, 0.51. It wasn't a race that moved a lot. And so I think when you think about our own internal analytics, you know, if you have Wisconsin at 47-47, or Pennsylvania 48-47 Trump, let's say, which I think is where we had it at the end, you know, you've got to have undecided to break your way more than your opponents, and you've got to get a little benefit from turnout, which we weren't able to do.
Obviously, the defining event of this race was the candidate switch, and every decision you guys had to make, everything you had to do was defined also by the compressed calendar in which you were operating in. Quentin, you were there when that switch happened. How were you able, there was a 1-month period between the debate and when the president actually dropped out. Obviously, it seemed like dropping out could be a possibility. Were you able to do any thinking or planning in that 1-month period about what a race with the vice president would look like? Or did you have to sort of start cold on that first day, the moment you got the call or the statement went out?
I mean, we started cold. There was no planning involved in any other candidates. I mean, we were honestly in crisis management mode of keeping President Biden in the race, convincing, Democratic allies that he could still do this. And one of the things was trying to keep the president out on the road as much. We were still doing everything we could from a campaign, and he made the decision that he did not want to continue on. And he pulled some of the senior leadership together and said that he was going to be with the vice president. It also wasn't anything that our team took for granted to just say, okay, she is the nominee. We knew that there was still a situation where we had to shore up delegates, and that's where we started from. And then after that point, that is when we began to say, okay, how can we define her? Also, Trump's favorabilities numbers, we had to do something about that as well. And so it was a lot of walking and chewing gum at the same time, but there really was no sort of contingency planning to turn the race over to her right after that debate or at any point until President Biden definitively said he wasn't going to continue on.
If I ran this campaign, I'd never show my face again. Why are they admitting this? Because they're going to get rehired. That's why. What do you mean? They've literally, these people, maybe not so much, but people who are attached to the campaign as consultants have been non-stop going on CNN and all of these other outlets to talk about how it was trans people that cost them the victory over and over again. They only get to be shameless. They only get to be shameless because people let them. Okay? That's it. The Democratic Party consistently entertains and also elevates losers. Okay? because their goals overall is to maintain the status quo. That's it. God fucking forbid that they disrupt the status quo. Did you just say it's literally people who are running the campaign saying that? These are the people who are responsible for the campaign, yes. But other consultants that have also been that have played a formative role in the campaign have been endlessly going on CNN and defending their positions by saying we did everything right and the voters were either too stupid to recognize it, which is, something that is if you say that out loud as a campaign person, like consultant, you should be fired permanently. Or saying that it's because we were just like too pro-trans or too Latinx adjacent. There is a real crisis of talent in, I think, the Democratic Party. And it is it's kind of like police. There's a culture of it is a culture of hiring and elevating losers over and over again.
Stephanie, I think what probably surprised a lot of people in politics was the vice president was a largely unknown quantity to much of the electorate. Mm-hmm. So you guys, under a very short time frame, had to do two things. As Quinn said, you had to teach people about her and also make a case against Donald Trump, who had just come off, he was at an all-time high, come off the assassination attempt, the debate against the president. In terms of messaging, how did you think about the balance between the two?
Well, the first thing we had to do is put on a convention, and we had about 3 weeks to flip a convention that was being built around Joe Biden. So,
which is why we didn't flip the. By the way, these are, ironically enough, every single person here, I'm pretty sure, is also or was also a Joe Biden campaign strategist. So that's the other part of this as well. Kamala Harris did not have her own staffers. She has had a lot of turnover on her end historically, even when she was vice president. So, with the exception of Pluff, most of the people here are, they were already on the Joe Biden campaign. So if you're wondering why, they have this perspective, and if you're wondering why they might not even like shit on Joe Biden too much, that's the reason. Because that's the one like acceptable liberal take that I'm on board with, which is like if you blame Joe Biden, because there is truth to that. Okay, there is at least truth to blaming Joe Biden because he does share a significant amount of the blame, a significant amount of the responsibility, not dropping out, not gearing up for being a transitional candidate and propping up a VP pick that could have potentially won. Even Kamala Harris, if you wanted to do that with her, like he didn't do that at all, and not dropping out until the very last moment, until he was forced to do so. Like these are all massively consequential decisions that absolutely played a formative role in Kamala Harris's defeat. But the former Biden staffers are not going to fucking say that either, especially because they worked on that campaign too.
We were able to flip it, to fit this very new character of a different generation, different experience, different background. And looking at the data at the time, which Jen and Pluff and Quentin have all talked about, she had a huge deficit in favorability because either people didn't know about her or what they did know about her was based off of negative media. So our first priority was to define her in that convention, fill in her bio. As part of that, we already knew how to do the negative on Trump, and we knew that there was a lot of Trumpnesia out there. People didn't remember the 4 years of the Trump administration that badly because they had been through hell. They had been through COVID, both under his watch and under President Biden's. I'm putting aside a lot of the details of who's at fault and what Biden did to dig us out and all of that. And then they had to deal with inflation. So they had been through hell. So looking back, you remember a previous time much more fondly because you've now think that you've gone through the worst. So we had to remind people what life was like. That was our second imperative. And then the third imperative as part of the convention and leading into the remaining days of the campaign is what's that choice? What are the two very different visions between Trump and Kamala Harris? So the convention, it demonstrated a lot of enthusiasm for Kamala Harris, a lot of freshness, future-oriented, bringing a variety of coalitions together. We had independents, Republicans, Democrats, business leaders, sports figures.
What about the progressives? Independents, Republicans, Democrats, business leaders.
Everybody coming together around.
Oh, no mention of the progressives. Okay. That's, maybe that's a problem that like this does not factor into your equation at all. perhaps that could be one of the major reasons why y'all fucked up.
A new way forward and finally turning the page. So, you know, through the rest of that campaign, our next thing was the debate just a few weeks later. And
I think it's really embarrassing to say we were trying to build a big tent with Republicans when Kamala Harris lost a greater share of Republican votes than Joe Biden did, with an objectively less, Joe Biden had an objectively more progressive campaign. Billy D calls out Hasan. What did he say?
Oh, wait. Speaking of Hasan, did you see this motherfucker? You see this fucking photo he posted on Twitter? I was like, dude,
chill,
what if
bro.
I was in...
First of all, he posts photos too. You can't be calling me out, Phil. You're trying to fill people in. I see the thirst traps you post before going live. Okay. He's doing the HasanAbi method.
My man.
He's doing the HasanAbi method. Oh, that's funny. Bro, that photo was so insane. I don't get it. What's insane about it? What is insane about it? Ray also called you out shameful.
You know? What the fuck?
What is it?
Guys, I just opened up Twitter and I just see Hasan cock.
Okay, it's you guys' fault. That's not the prominent fixture of this photo. That's not supposed to be the main emphasis.
What the fuck? What the? Wow! What the hell?
That's just simply a part of the photo. It made me pregnant. It's not like it's not supposed to be the most important part of the photo at all. It's supposed to not even be a part of the photo. It's just an afterthought. There's no other way to show my fucking legs. What do you want me to do? The photo is 30,000 likes in an hour. That is 2 hours. That's insane. Look, I almost have the indent. You can see. I saw the pig and had to have a cigarette. I had a girlfriend until you posted that. We just got a mortgage together. What do I do? You're leaning back so your schmeat can be more prominent. No, I'm flexing. You're on TV at my parents' house. You're flexing your cock and balls. Okay. This is why so many fucking incels hate me, dude. The shit that you guys are saying in here. But that gyno though, yeah, I got a little bit of dude, I don't know, man. I feel like my titties are tittied up. You're my litmus test for if I've gone full lesbian as of today. Def not. Chat, we out-meated Donovan Mitchell. What? My Hatsune Miku poster going down and you're replacing her? That's okay. Everybody calm down. Okay. All right. We're done with this. You have to see this reaction. No, I don't want to hit translate post on this. I'm clicking away. We're done. We're done. We're done. We're done. We're done. I think everyone's making a bigger deal out of this than they should have been. Donovan Mitchell did a Skims photo shoot and people started meat watching. We're done with this. We're done with this. What is this? Context? Oh, is the Donovan Mitchell meat context? I mean, okay, that's not, I didn't out meat him, dude. Are you crazy? He's got meat for fucking days. That's wild. You like the Schmeat talk and you okay with it? You should watch this TikTok. He has your take on Kamala.
Politicians want to win over young people. I suggest they actually talk to one because they really think they can still get up there and pull that. If you have a small business, I'll fight for you. Motherfucker, we all eat cup noodles. You really think any of us have a small business? We have managers that we hate. That's what we have. If anyone my age tried to be like, yeah, I actually just started my own business. I'm now the CEO of my own company and I'm my own boss. That motherfucker's in an MLM. Ignore everything he says. He saves up.
Meat Shadow. Okay, guys, do you want me to go back to the Democratic Party's failures in this last election cycle, or do you want to keep talking about Schmeat talk? Chad needs to chill the fuck out. You got brought up on an OTV podcast earlier.
Yeah. I was talking about that today on stream. How like when I'm scrolling on my TikTok For You page, I get a lot of girls that are like thirsting over Hasan. I'm like, it's just fucking crazy because he's just like in our circle. Yeah. And I get to see him and like I talk to him and he's always like, hey, you know, and I'm like, and this is the guy that you guys are tripping over this man.
Dude, the worst part about knowing Hasan is when I liked Fear Ann TikTok because I went on their podcast and all of a sudden I got Hasan armpit fan cams on my TikTok and I was like, holy shit. I was like, no. You hold down the button and you're like, I do not like this or like not interested in this post. I was like doing it to all of those and they wouldn't go.
Okay, that's hater behavior. You should be liking those. Like that's crazy, okay? My friends are my worst haters, honestly. That's crazy to me because it's like why would you hate on that? Why it's just like you should like it and support it. Like I don't understand.
Go away.
So you've got Jenna Ortega, Sydney Sweeney, Hasan Armpits.
Yeah.
Like that's your
dude. And then the other one was I did a stuff with Vinny at the Ludwig games, and all of a sudden Vinny Hacker shirtless TikToks were coming out.
Okay, hold up. Let's see. Did she say she doesn't like the Vinny Hacker shirtless ones?
Bro, like I have met these people in person.
Yes.
It's so weird that this is like on my time. I need to get it off. So like I'm like super fast scrolling, and every time I see like
oh, so she didn't hit the do not like on Vinny Hacker ones. To be fair, I get it. I understand. Heavier adults that push the plates. Not gonna lie, I tried to follow your political content on TikTok and it instantly became a Hasan thirst trap for you page. Yeah, I try to repost a lot of like the HasanAbi Clips Industrial Complex on TikTok that actually posts my takes from this stream. And there's like fantastic accounts on there. The problem is they absolutely get like they get no motion in comparison to the thirst trap TikToks. Like the thirst talk TikToks get like hundreds of thousands of likes, but the political take stuff unfortunately get a fraction of that.
Are you still just looking at it? So the core of the company is really solving those two things. How do we build something that's greater, which usually give people what they want by allowing them to discover, but then at the same time solve the monetization aspect. And so in podcast, you know, the whole industry has evolved quite a lot.
I feel like I need to stop eating pizza.
Sort of download to streaming.
I need to stop eating pizza.
Tools,
bro, you're skinny as hell, bro. It's fine. You earned the pizza. What the fuck?
And obviously in video, it's totally different type of stacks, and we see that being a huge barrier.
When this dude hits me up, when I steal the HasanAbi or the Hasan method of thirst trapping to get people to come to a stream.
Put the pizza down and get your meat out.
This man will hit me up in DM. He's like, "You killing it, champ," and this motherfucker just comes out like this. Yeah, Hasan needs to be banned off of Twitch.
No, Philip DeFranco is now on the ban Hasan train. Oh, we're cooked. We've lost another pillar. New hater unlocked.
That photo.
Oh no. Oh no. We've lost the libs. He banned Hasan train, but he's valid. They say Icarus burned brightly before he went out, King. All right, let's continue.
It was boom, 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 all the way through probably early October after the Walls debate, that we had to move through these things so quickly. Once we got through all of that, then the race started to gel. And you know, to the extent people were open to remembering what life was like under Trump, we were trying to fill that in. To the extent people had questions about Kamala Harris, we were still trying to fill that in. So in 107 days, you know, what typically takes us a year and a half, 2 years in a presidential campaign, we were defining someone who was wholly undefined from the start, trying to remind people about the opponent and what life was like underneath him, and also take into account what the political environment was and the realities that we had to deal with, which, you know, she was the incumbent, but she really wasn't the incumbent. People didn't know that much about her. The economy was still slightly getting better, but we couldn't really take credit for it. I
like that the people tasked with defining a candidate that was not previously defined are talking about how they failed to do that, but in a way where they're not taking responsibility whatsoever and simply just going, yeah, we couldn't market this product. And it's like, dude, your job is to market the product. You're talking about your incompetence in marketing the product while saying, well, this is unmarketable. She's still saying the economy was rebounding. This is a thing that I kept repeating. The economy in 2016 was quote unquote fine, okay? And it seemingly was not fine for a lot of people, so much so that they wanted to take a sledgehammer to these institutions. Clearly, they did not consider it to be fine back in 2016 when they voted for Trump the first time. It's like especially not fine now.
We were in a bit of a crossroads trying to figure out what that October messaging and closing messaging would look like.
Pluff, there was a sort of a debate outside of your campaign that the primary and most important thing to do was to educate voters about Kamala Harris, and that voters sort of knew all they needed to know about Trump. I take it you guys disagreed with that analysis and you felt a need to at least knock his numbers down a little bit. Is that right?
Of course. I mean, that is nonsense. So first of all, back to where the question you were talking to Stephanie about. Kamala Harris started this race, if I recall, with favorable 33 to 35. She ended it at 48. She actually ended the election with a higher approval rating than Donald Trump. I'm not sure someone's won the presidency with a lower approval rating. So I think as people got to know her, they liked her. I think her approval rating now post-election is north of 50. That was really hard work. And I will say that, think about if Kamala Harris had come out of a process that was traditional, running in and winning a primary, so maybe become the nominee March or April, you spend a month, 6 weeks on your biography. You keep coming back to it. You define the Trump first term. You raise the stakes of what a Trump second term would be like. You have like a month just to run paid advertising on things like housing.
Bro, they didn't even do that well enough. Like they didn't even remind people of like how shitty it was when Trump was president. They didn't even do that well enough. They did a horrible job at that. Oh my God, dude. They're going to run Kamala again. I swear to God. I swear to God, bro. It is so... Whew.
In your tax cut. So this is where there was a price to be paid for the short campaign. And you can't even say 107 days, because to Quentin's point, some of that was spent shoring up the Democratic nomination. Then you really have to have said everything you want to say by the time people start voting early. So we had a little more than 2 months to do bio, contrast on the economy, on healthcare, raising the stakes of Trump. So yes, when you have a race where you've got the current incumbent president with approval ratings of, let's say, 38 to 40, never in history have we had this before, at least since, I guess, Grover Cleveland. So once you have a former president running where 48 to 51% of the people approve of his first term, and people are dissatisfied with the direction of the country, you have to raise the stakes of what a second term would be like. So I think for us, we spent much more time trying to raise the stakes of a second term than re-arbitrating the first, because voters just weren't open to that. So that's why pointing out, his tariff and what that would mean in terms of a huge sales tax for the American people.
That's the chatter. I don't know how to respond to you, chatter. That's so funny. Yeah, maybe they've missed a few social cues this election.
The fact that he's more unhinged, he wants unchecked power. Project 2025 ended up being about as popular as the Ebola virus.
Question.
So we did a lot of good work there. And now, of course, the son of a bitch lied about it, and he's hiring everybody who authored it. Project 2025 is going to be the Trump administration agenda, as we pointed out. So we had to do that. So if we had just run a race solely on Kamala Harris positives, though we did a lot of that, on what Kamala Harris wants to do on the economy, we did a lot of that. It's worth reminding your listeners who live in California, New York, or Alabama or Florida, you're not experiencing the presidential race as it's experienced in Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina. We spent a lot of time, she spent a lot of time driving a core economic view. That was not enough. When you've got someone whose first term was judged favorably enough by enough people to give him the election, and people are dissatisfied about where you are now, and you're part of that administration, you have to basically raise the stakes. And for us, it was on the economy. It was on the fact that all the people who stood in his way last time were warning us about him. It was about Project 2025. It was about abortion. And, I think we did a good job of that based on our data, but we had to stay on that. So I think that is an incredibly faulty reading, that what we should have done is just lift up Kamala Harris. We clearly did. Her favorability rating increased by, I believe, 15 points. If you look at who do you trust more to look out for people like your family, who do you think is going to fight for the middle class? Huge progress for Kamala Harris. Even on crime and immigration, we were able to make double-digit progress. So we were very focused on lifting her up. But to win a race like this, given the political atmospherics, which were quite challenging, we had to raise the risk of a Trump second term.
Jen, you guys are obviously operating in a very, very tough political environment. Incumbent president, very low approval ratings, as Paul mentioned, wrong track, right track, approval of the economy, all very challenging. Also, in at least the public polling, huge desire for change, right? Frustration with the status quo. Not just that's here in the United States, we've seen that across the world since COVID. Challenging place to be if you were the vice president to the unpopular incumbent president. Felt like much of the convention, as Stephanie mentioned, was trying to make her a change candidate, talk about turning the page. So can you talk a little bit about how you tried to do that and whether you think she could or should have done more to distance herself from President Biden? Something that I think, as evidenced by the answer on The View, she was at least personally uncomfortable with.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, first of all, I think people, when they vote for president, want to vote about the future. And they saw in the vice president someone they didn't know a lot about a background. So, who she was, what she stood for, what she did as vice president. So in every step of what we were trying to do, we had to tell a pretty robust story in one ad or one policy rollout or one event that you don't often have to do because of the time we were in. But I do think.
Yeah. And what they arrived at was, I'm a small business. My mother is a small business. I love small businesses because my mother was one. Also, I prosecuted transnational gangs. Joy. I have joy when I think about transnational gangs. My favorite thing to think about is transnational gangs and the joy I have prosecuting them. and also the joy I have when I think about small businesses in the opportunity economy. How could this have failed, guys? I don't understand. This was the greatest campaign message of all time. Yeah, I love the border wall. The border wall is great, actually. I've decided the border wall is great after calling everyone that defended the border wall a racist for 8 fucking years. I also want to drill. Drill, baby, drill. Every concession that the Democrats made read as just simple hypocrisy. That's it. Every concession that they made read as simple hypocrisy, that the Democrats were trying to just say, oops, we got caught lying. We actually like these things. These things were good. We were just lying when we said they're bad. So why the fuck does that matter?
I think that we really focused from the get-go on how she was different than everyone else, different than Joe Biden, different than Donald Trump. And at the end of the day, the choice was her versus Donald Trump. And at the same time, you know, she was very clear that she was a new generation of leadership, but it wasn't just like a statement. It was, here's what I need to focus on. Her first policy announcements were economic, talking about housing, talking about lowering costs, understanding that people really didn't feel like things were progressing in the way that they wanted to, a la the right track, wrong track data, but how she brought her own point of view to thinking about housing, sandwich generation. That was probably her biggest applause line, one of the best testing things that we did. That wasn't a poll tested, let's work on this poll, this data to tell us this is the right issue we should go talk about. That was about her life and also understanding what people in the country were really needing.
Oh, bro, these people are, I think these people just are bad. That's it. And it's not like the Republicans are good or have better people. They're just less bad, I guess. And only because like Trump reads as more authentic than Kamala Harris does. And these people will never understand why. Saying Kamala Harris is like, trying to make it seem like Kamala Harris was like a unique orator. Oh, she came up with a sandwich generation all on her own because that's her real experience. Like, that's dog shit, dude. She had to make up for her lack of charisma with good policies, and they're not going to talk about the policies anyway. So why are you acting like a thing that people genuinely did not see as though it was the reality? Like people saw her as a political people saw her as this like charismatic political figure that was talking about her genuine experiences in a way that translated to broader acceptance.
So I think that in a 107-day race, it is very difficult to do all the things you would normally do in a year and a half, 2 years. But I think wherever we had an opportunity, the vice president did put her own stamp on this and did it in a deeper way than I think probably we got the kind of full breadth of coverage on it. Of course, you know, when you have an administration that a lot of progress has been made and you're part of that progress, it's complicated when you're asked questions.
For so many people that talk about how closely they're tracking the data or how closely they're tracking, you know, even messages. I wonder if they were closely tracking the messages around Gaza. Was that a consideration at all? I doubt it.
Questions in certain ways, but at the end of the day, I think she really, every time she turned, talked to a voter, every time she was out on the stump, she really leaned into her own vision. But the headwinds were tough. I will also, though, add, of course, we lost. So I'm not here to say that that didn't happen. We would much rather not have that happen. But where she campaigned, we did way better than the rest of the country. And Donald Trump did worse, to the point that you were just talking about with Pluff. That idea that people have just a well-constructed, already baked in idea about Trump and they don't need to learn anymore is just complete fallacy. I mean, his numbers are stronger today than they have ever been. Yeah. And that was critical for us. And we also believe this race was not just about Kamala Harris. It was Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. And we had to set that choice and that frame up. And I think that we were able to, anywhere we campaigned in all 7 of these states, where Donald Trump, by the way, campaigned too. He did worse and we did better. And we did make real progress against these national headwinds. If in every other state but the battlegrounds, there was a negative 8-point shift to the right. In the battlegrounds, there was only 3. So we needed it to be better than that. And perhaps if we had more time, we could have done that. But I think that's fundamental, that when people learn more about her, understood what she stood for, where she came from, and what her vision was, they responded well to that. And they responded in a favorable way, especially in contrast.
Wow. We lost by less in states where we campaigned, as opposed to losing even harder in states where we didn't campaign. Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, listen, we suck shit and we lost across the board and we're dog shit. We're awful. It's like, you see, we could have lost by 20, but we simply lost by 14. And that in and of itself is a victory. Got it.
to, a point of view that Donald Trump will be worse. And I think that's playing out right now.
And Dan, on the Biden question, we of course got that everywhere we went. And we knew what the data was. We knew we had to show her as her own person and point to the future and not try to rehash the past. But she also felt that she was part of the administration. And unless we said something like, well, I would have handled the border completely differently, we were never going to satisfy anybody. So we did talk about things like she's a different generation. Most of her career is from outside of Washington, not inside Washington. So she knows a lot of the best ideas are from across the country. Her career has been about reaching across the aisle, finding common sense ways to get things done. It's not been based in ideological politics. All of these things, we were trying to tell a story.
Oh my God, they're so stupid, dude. Oh my God. Oh my God. Wow. This is worse than I thought. I sometimes also fall into the same trappings that I urge chatters not to fall into, and assume that like a person in a position of power is at least knowledgeable or somewhat more knowledgeable than myself or more intelligent. I tell you guys all the time, like, some of these congresspersons are dumb as fuck, right? But we tend to forget how fucking stupid the average person in DC might be because they're, wearing suits and they're speaking in a professional cadence and yet I'm in awe at how resilient the stupidity is overall. She said, "Oh, look at all of our successes of showcasing Kamala Harris as like outside of the DC bubble." How did she present that? By fucking saying common sense solutions across the country. I mean, this is so unimaginably arrogant and so silly and so wrong. Wow. Americans love common sense solutions, sir. You don't understand. That's why she said it. It's like, yeah, they love bipartisanship. That's what we need to do. That's why that's why the candidate that has never actually even remotely broached bipartisanship defeated our bipartisanship candidate, because Americans love bipartisanship.
And give the impression that she was different without pointing to a specific issue.
Can I ask this, why not a specific issue? Is it something she was unwilling to do? You weren't even feel disingenuous, or?
Because she felt like she was part of the administration. So why should she look back and cherry pick some things that she would have done differently when she was part of it? And she had tremendous loyalty to President Biden. And if we had said, just imagine this. You've been on plenty of campaigns. Imagine if we said, well, we would have taken this approach on the border. Imagine the round of stories coming out after that of people saying, well,
yeah, good. Yeah, that would have been good. That would have separated you in the eyes of the electorate from the unpopular guy that you were replacing. That's called good media, not bad media. Ooh, drama. Why is Kamala Harris separating herself from Joe Biden? That's a story that benefits the campaign. Wow. That kind of publicity would be good,
Well, she never said that in a meeting, or what meeting when she said this, or I remember when she did that. And it wasn't going to give us what we needed because it wouldn't be a clean break. It would be, days upon days in a limited time window that we had.
You know what's really fucking stupid about this? They did not in any type of way feel uncomfortable with Kamala Harris distancing herself from her very public declarations from 4 fucking years ago. But God forbid she distanced herself from the guy that made the situation so dire that you had to substitute yourself in his place to run for president. They have no issue distancing from progressive policies that she had, quote unquote, fake championed, her own fucking platform that made her look like a buffoon, a hypocritical phony to those who even pay close enough attention. But the only ways in which she was able to distance herself successfully from Biden was when she was hugging and kissing and fucking and sucking Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney. Ridiculous.
Of dealing of who, what, when, where. So the best we could do, and the most that she felt comfortable with, was saying, like, look, vice presidents never break with their presidents. The only time in recent memory is when Pence broke with Trump after Trump stormed the Capitol. So Biden's not...
They call that the murder exemption. If the president tries to murder you, can break, yes.
If you are, ripping up the Constitution, trying to overturn an election, people die, then you could break with your president. But absent that, Vice presidents stick by their presidents. And she wasn't willing to, change that precedent for whoever the future president-vice presidential partnership would be, because it would mean a whole, different set of...
Yeah, we must not break norms. Excuse me. I love the rules and the norms. I am the norms abider. I am the rules and norms respecter. We must not break them. Okay, then why the fuck is Kamala Harris running for president? Why? Why is Kamala Harris president then? Running for president. She didn't become president. That was a violation of the norms. The fuck?
Problems, as if we don't have enough problems in our democracy right now. So unless we were willing to say, Biden said green and she said blue on any particular issue, we were never really going to satisfy that. So our focus was, let's look to the future. Let's describe her and her approach to things. Let's use policies, future-looking policies, to demonstrate that difference. But in the end, we've all seen the data. Too many people thought that you'd be a continuation, which on the economy was, the incumbent killer.
Quentin, in the post-election analysis, there's been a ton of focus on the very ubiquitous trans ad that the Trump campaign spent tens of millions of dollars on. There have been sort of two strains of thought of this. One, the sense that her position and the Democratic Party position on trans-related issues were one of the reasons.
There's nothing funnier than talking about the economy being the incumbent killer when, Mexico is right there, dude. Mexico is literally right there. AMLO was an old, doddering man, but he was very well liked. Part of the reason why he was very well liked, aside from his daily fucking live stream broadcast that completely defeated any kind of stranglehold that corporate-backed mainstream media in Mexico could have, was the welfare expansion policies that he implemented. AMLO, as the doddering old man who believes in fucking duendes, wood elves, was able to successfully transition power from his hands into Claudia Sheinbaum. Not just a woman, not just any woman, but he presented her as his successor, but a Jewish woman in a country that's 98% Catholic. How the fuck did that happen? I guess maybe the wood elves are real and they made it happen. It's right there. You can just point directly to what is going on as a successful strategy. Now, it would be very funny if someone were to say, Mexico is simply more woke than the United States of America, right? Between the U.S. and Mexico, they are more woke on women's rights, at least when it comes to abortion, unconditionally offering support for abortion. There are places in America that are worse than Mexico now on abortion. That part is real. Having said that, however, it has some of the highest fucking rates of femicide on the planet. What are we talking about? Perhaps there was some other reasons.
That's why we lost, but also real questions about why the campaign decided not to respond to the ad. Specifically, my understanding from reporting, at least, is that you guys tested a bunch of responses and they didn't work. Just tell me your thinking there and what role you think that ad and those issues actually played in the race.
Yeah, I think it's important to put everything into context. We've very well established the time frame. And it's honestly a lot shorter than 107 days, but we had three core objectives to the paid media. It was to define the vice president. It was to defend her on incoming attacks, and a lot of these attacks have been baked in for the past 3.5 years. While she was the vice president, they were attacking her. She was at negative 20 something on immigration. We got that down to negative 10. Trump had a positive 22-point advantage on the economy. We got that down to 7. And we had to respond to those things. And when you sort of looked at the core issues, aside from the attacks, trans issues are just at the bottom for voters. The economy, inflation, crime, immigration are the top issues. They were also some of the issues that she was getting attacked on. And to the element of sort of defining her and doing it in a way that sort of fit within what you're trying to do, there's a direct approach that you can take to anything, and then there is an approach that you can take that accomplishes 2 of the 3 objectives. A lot of the stuff that we did, such as talking about her prosecutorial background, and then saying that she went after transnational gangs, cartels, it was to push back pseudolly on the immigration attacks that were coming at her, as well as credentialing her background on things that were absent and standalone of the.
Yeah, that shit really did numbers, man. You guys banged on that. Everybody loved when she kept saying she prosecuted transnational gangs.
The Biden administration, we did a lot of stuff about her record as AG, her record as a prosecutor, not as vice president, because it also allowed her to stand alone separate from the Biden administration. On the trans attack, obviously it was a very effective ad at the end. I ultimately don't believe that it was about the issue of trans. I think that it made her seem out of touch. And it was sort of a pseudo-economic ad underneath it, because he was saying you're going to pay for it with taxpayer money. And it was in her own words. And that's something. But we tested a ton of responses to this, direct responses. And none of them ever tested as well as basically her, talking about what she would do, to Jen's point, the future, the type of president that she would be. There were elements of it where we did try to say, and we put ads on television.
Dude, The only reason why that kind of shit is even remotely effective when it's not, like in the same breath, this dude literally openly admitted that trans issues are the bottom of people's priorities. That means they are also the bottom of transphobes' priorities as well. They don't give a fuck, okay? Which means all of this is a distraction, and it's only an effective distraction if you don't have any campaign messaging that the Republicans are more focused on dismantling. That's it. Say you are in support of Medicare for all, and then watch the Republicans try to land attacks against that. Be like, it's socialism. We focus tested it. There were no answers. It's like, yeah, because you're not fucking offering adequate answers to the they care about they, them, not you ad, which people still think is a fucking banger ad. It's so stupid. It only worked on the Democratic Party staffers and I guess the consulting class and those who are over at CNN and shit. That was not a good ad at all. Nobody gives a fuck about trans people. The most effective counter to that is to go, really? You think trans people are the reason why your egg prices are so high, you fucking idiot? That's all you gotta say. I didn't realize all landlords in America were trans, okay? I didn't realize that, like, your boss, every boss in America is trans. Every corporate executive is trans or an undocumented migrant. Problem is, they love the corporate executives. They love the bosses and they love the landlords. So they can't fucking say anything about them. It's so dumb. You should have just said, this hyperfixation on trans people is weird as fuck. They're your neighbors. Nobody cares about this. They are not the reason why your rent is going up. They're not the reason why the price of a carton of milk is so goddamn high. But they didn't do that. And also, that alone doesn't work unless... That messaging alone doesn't work unless you also have like positive policies that you can point to that directly respond to people's material circumstances. That deflection is successful as long as you also have other policies. That deflection wouldn't even matter. You wouldn't even need to do that deflection if the Republicans were too busy running against the positions that you are pointing to, that you are going to do. Like they did with the price gouging shit, which was a demonstrable failure for the Republicans. And yet they stopped hammering that point. Kamala Harris could have gone up there and been like, dude, look, listen. Tens of millions of Americans turned around and were like, oh, we're going to deport 20 million people. As long as it lowers the price of eggs, I'm in. Okay? Some people didn't believe it. Some people believed it. Some people were hateful about it, and they definitely wanted it, and they voted for it. But most people were just like, it's the price of eggs. It's the price of bread. It's the price of milk. It's the price of my treats. Wages and wage growth did not outpace inflation. That's it. That's simply it. That's the point. That's the only point that matters. And Republicans were like, yeah, we're gonna lower the price of all of the goods by deporting 20 million migrants. And they were like, okay, I'm on board. Kamala Harris on the other side could have literally turned around and been like, oh, you want the price of eggs lowered? I'm jailing the Walton family. Which message would resonate better with voters? I'm not saying she should do this. I'm not even saying that would actually lower the price of eggs. It would probably lower the price of a lot of shit. But my point is, Americans didn't give a fuck at that point. Okay, they didn't give a shit about what Kamala Harris was going to do in an effort to lower the price of eggs. Okay, yeah. Mexico also recently just renewed price control measures as well, as of November 11th. Claudia Sheinbaum said on Monday that she would renew an agreement with food producers and retailers to keep the price set of basic groceries affordable for consumers. The measure had been rolled out by her predecessor, former President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, in 2022, as inflation was as high as it has been in 2 decades. We want prices to come down for consumers, especially for those who don't have much. Sheinbaum, who took office at the beginning of October, said in her morning press conference. The new accord will be signed on Wednesday or Thursday. López Obrador, Sheinbaum's mentor, launched the price controls in collaboration with the private sector on a set of groceries, including corn tortillas, rice, soap, tomatoes, and toilet paper. Lo and behold, especially the working poor in Mexico fucking treat AMLO like a goddamn deity, dude. They love him. I know that there's a lot of resistance libs and shit like that in Mexico, but, you know, the numbers on the boards. Look at his fucking approval rating. Look at her approval rating. Look at the numbers that she won by. People do not forget. There are fucking people who voted for Trump because they thought that they would get stimmy checks, okay? People don't forget the last time that the government actually did something right by them. I don't think you guys understand. Yeah, her approval rating is 74% right now. AMLO peak was 84%. Another example of this is fucking China. People always get mad, but like Harvard studied the Chinese attitudes towards the government and were shocked by the results. Like these guys are not in the pocket of China. They're not invested in making a pro-China a pro-China fucking message at all. Chinese government approval ratings are consistently 90 plus. And it makes sense when you think about it. If you in your lifetime saw a relatively like an agrarian society go from that to having like tier 1 cities pop up left and right with like 20 million plus people, you're going to be like, this is the greatest. I love this. Oh my God, we've become a dominant force on the planet. Why the fuck wouldn't you be happy in that situation? Of course you would. It's like not that difficult of a concept to grasp unless you're a fucking dumbass American and you forgot what democracy is supposed to be about. Now, I'm not even saying that about China in general. I'm just simply saying that governance, good governance, and democracy is supposed to be about offering things to your constituents. Okay? The greatest example I can also point to that you're seeing cycle after cycle is the black vote. Why is it that the black voting bloc has consistently been more pro-Democrat the older they get, more liberal the older they get? Their voting patterns show that the black voting bloc is significantly more pro-Democratic Party the older they get. It's because they remember the last fucking time the Democrats actually expended political capital for them. That's it. And the further you move away from the Civil Rights Act, like the further you move away from that time, generationally speaking, the more people move away from the party. I think it's the same with queer people still being so in the pocket. We still remember 2014. Yeah, but that's like impossible to contend with for a lot of people. Americans are so cynical about the way they analyze politics that they literally think it's actually bad when a politician, quote unquote, buys votes. That's called politics, man. That's called doing right by your constituents. What do you mean fucking buying votes? I've said this for years. It's like we are so lost in the sauce, so overcome with the expectation that politicians are never supposed to do right by you, that when they actually are entertaining the notion of offering you something, people think, oh, it's cynical. They just want to buy votes. Oh, you mean be a democracy? That's what you mean. I can't believe that they're not simply in the pocket of corporations and their interests. There's something wrong here. It's like, yeah, there is. There's a lot wrong here. Let me tell you. Holy moly.
Of her saying, you've seen all the negative attacks against me, and try to bottle it up, because I also think you have to think about the entire sentiment when you're running a paid campaign. And the trans ad, I think because of the content, a lot of people felt like it was much bigger than what it was. But to put that into context, Team Red, meaning Trump and all the super PACs that were spending on Trump's behalf, that was 7% of their total ads was on that issue.
Was that specific? I think it was two ads, right?
Yeah.
There was the original, and then there was the one with Charlemagne. Yep.
And it was all Trump. So Trump spent, 37% of his, 200 million on that ad, but Trump wasn't the only spender. We were getting hit across the board. And so you have to take into account what all the super PACs are doing and play off of that. And I think that's what Trump was doing. His super PACs were hitting us on the economy, immigration, and crime. And Trump even started hitting us on immigration. And I think the veracity of which we came out of the gate and responded to that, they weren't expecting that from us. And then they backed off of that. And at that point, they started going into it. And so it is easy to say with the kind of resources that we raised, we should have been able to do everything. But that's not the case. You have to make decisions in the time frame that we were in this race. We had to choose. And we chose to focus more of our attention.
Bro, you had $1 billion that you raised in like a week. What part of this analysis is Liz Cheney? Where does she come in? I can't watch the rest of this, man. I can't even entertain this shit. It's so ass. Let's get to some real thinkers. Let's get to some real thinkers, okay? That's right. It's time to be fucking value-tained.